can tell I'm using last week's script, right? Okay.
This week we continue.
Yes. Continue our. All right. This is take two. Hang on. Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our retrospective on atomic age horror with the 1958 paranoid alien invasion movie, I Married a Monster from Outer Space. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's film, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, co author of California Tiki, coming this August from the History Press. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, creator of the long-running indie comic Halloween Man, and coming July 4th from Comixology and Sugar Skull Media, the new Lucy Chaplin Science Starlet special. Say hello, Drew.
I actually saw Rise from Fire this afternoon, and they rock.
Did you
Oh,
really?
thanks, man. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That is
Yes, they do.
extremely cool. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. I Married a Monster from Outer Space is one of these movies like I Walked with a Zombie that has a title that suggests one thing, but it is another thing. I mean, this is one of those things where this is a way, way deeper and cooler movie than the title. It is a 1958 American black and white sci-fi film from Paramount Pictures, produced and directed by Gene Fowler Jr. It stars Tom Tryron, who eventually would give up acting and become a novelist, and Gloria Talbot. Paramount released the film on a double bill with the fantastic The Blob. And it's basically about a young couple. They get married, and the wife soon discovers that her husband is not the man that she thought that he was. He has, in fact, been taken over by an alien who intends to turn her into some kind of breeding vessel if he can bother to show any affection to her. So, this is a good film for Mother's Day. And we should start to get our opening thoughts from Julia, and then we'll go Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Julia, I don't know if you've ever seen I Married a Monster from Outer Space. I'm dying to know what you thought of it.
So thank you for selecting a film in honor of Mother's Day on behalf of all of us mothers that appreciate being thought of in this way. Um, this film was very good to see after the one that we saw last week, Them, because it really made me realize how progressive Them was.
Yeah.
It was very, just the idea, and not just Them, but what was the movie that we saw recently that had the female scientist also? I don't know, but the movies that we've been seeing where they take place in the 50s or even in the 60s, and they don't have this sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Women are meant to be,
Queen of Blood had female
Yeah,
scientists. Obviously, Revenge of the Creature, although that was last summer that we did Revenge of the Creature.
right, true. Yeah, Revenge of the Creature was another one. But anyway, the idea is that this film, to me, is sort of the epitome of, wow, the sexual mores of the 50s and early 60s are so different than, because we still have a long ways to go, and in some ways we've regressed in the last few years as far as our the sexual politics go, and all that. Misogyny has kind of reared its ugly head a little more than it had before. At least it's come out from hiding. But gosh, it is so out in the open in these movies, or in this film in particular, and in the movies of that time. It was crazy just to see how, women are useless. They're intended for to cook dinner and make babies, and they know it. They're old maids if they haven't gotten married. She needed to be, that poor woman needed to be saved from being a career woman.
That was
and
funny.
She says it
Yeah.
sarcastically, but she means it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. So it's very interesting and enlightening to see it, because it does make you appreciate, okay, we have made some progress. It's not all backwards. But it was fun to watch for sure, and I did enjoy it. But it was also very interesting to see the context.
Excellent. Tony, so what did you think of I Married a Monster from Outer Space?
I found this to be an extremely cynical movie.
Mm.
Very much like, hey, marriage, the animal deaths just freak me out.
Yeah.
And it's for no good reason. And it's tame in comparative. But over the years, I think that I'm way more upset. Like mass sci-fi destruction of planets and people and nuclear destruction, all of that, laser death, anything. But man, cats and dogs, screw you for doing that. Rain watched it with me. She's like, this is horrible. Although
Yeah.
she also said we should spend some time talking about the lead character's bangs and how terrible a haircut she has.
You didn't like her haircut? Okay. All right.
Oh,
Nope.
Rain was like, oh man, it's like what'd she say? It was like the 30 Rock episode where Liz Lemon cuts her hair and then it's an HD. It's just the most terrible haircut ever. She's like, who let her on the set with that? So I don't know. But we watched it together and there's some really interesting parts, but I found it to be extremely cynical and kind of mean-spirited in a lot of ways, but also very anxiety producing because of how this woman's trapped in this town eventually. I found that very interesting. But yeah, I don't know if I would exactly revisit it, but it's got a lot of good talking points, which is kind of what you want for a podcast. So
Absolutely. Drew, what are your thoughts?
So this is my second time watching this movie. The first time was around Halloween when I still lived in Dallas. They showed it actually with Invasion of the Body Snatchers at the Lakewood.
That's interesting because that's exactly what I kept thinking of.
Yeah, well, it's definitely got those fingerprints all over it. But I found that I actually really I thought it was a fun movie the first time I saw it, like a fun example of this sort of paranoia light-in alien invasion movie from this time period. But I actually really thought this had a lot more going for it the second time I watched it. And I'm sure somebody else has pointed this out, but I kind of see this as almost a prototype for Rosemary's Baby in a lot of ways. Because you have this poor woman who's stuck and nobody believes her or they're in on it. And, that story, I get why Tony kind of sees this sort of cynicism in it because, there is a weird level of darkness in this. Yeah. And I also found myself sort of fascinated by an unresolved subplot about the one alien who has taken over the main alien buddy, who is just really loving being a human being. I found that kind of fascinating. They don't explore it nearly enough, but that part of this movie, I was like, that's a really interesting idea that doesn't get taken to any logical, it could have been taken to a much more logical and kinky extreme if this movie had been
whole
made
movie has a lot of ways it could have gone. Like you're talking about Rosemary's Baby, I really thought it was going to be an alien baby. Like I thought that they were going to figure out how to I thought it was weird that they were saying they were trying to figure out how to change women so they could procreate with them. I'm like, what? How could you do that if you're not actually possessing the women? But I thought they were going to figure out how to mix their DNA with the male DNA. At first I thought they were possessing the men. I didn't realize they were duplicating them. So I thought they were going to create half alien babies, and I thought I really thought it was going to be Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and that was going to be the end of it. Like the world is done. But no, it went a different way.
I think that if this movie was remade now, it would be a lot kinkier and a lot more perverse. And that either your mileage may vary with that, but I mean there's a lot of subtext and undertones to this that are very perverted and weird when you think about it. But interesting movie. I like I said, on second viewing, I think this movie had a lot more going for it than the first time.
I should point out that in 1998, this movie was remade for cable, and I have no idea if it was better, worse, kinkier, dumb. I've no idea. But there is a TV movie that I have not seen that no doubt is on YouTube because that's how the world works. And it's called I Married a Monster, which actually is a better title for
Really? You
this.
think? I love the weird 1950s overlong titles.
The
Like
thing
that.
is, irony, it's just like I Walked with a Zombie. If that movie had been called almost anything else, people would probably still watch it a lot more than they do because somehow I Walked with a
But I
Zombie.
love the title. I Walk with a Zombie. I think
Yeah.
it's a great title, and
Both of
like
those,
this
both
to
of
me
these
is
titles.
like
Yeah.
I was a teenage werewolf. You know, like I love those kind of movies.
They're true confessions titles. Those titles are
Yeah.
all ironic and they're intended to look like a title that you would see on the cover of a magazine, like a True Detective or a or whatever. And
Well, they're titles that are also elevator pitches too.
yeah, indeed. But the thing is, it's been so long since we've had like true crime magazines and stuff like that that titles like I Married a Monster from Outer Space no longer resonate with irony or anything. They just now seem very strange. So anyway, but I hear you, and it's a good point, and you know, I don't know. But I Married a Monster, somehow that still seems less. It doesn't get the laugh. I Married a Monster from Outer Space gets a laugh, guaranteed, to me anyway. But okay. First, I just wanted to mention first, Julie and I watched this movie the way that I would have watched it if I had managed to catch it. Maybe I didn't, I forgot. But we watched a bootleg version of the film taped off of USA in 1988 when it was shown on a Saturday afternoon as part of Commander USA's Groovy Movies, which was the series that whereby I discovered like most of your weird Mexican horror from the 60s and 50s, and you know all kinds of you know then sort of slightly forgotten and cult films and stuff like that. So like you know the Coffin of the Vampire and stuff like that. That you know anything that K. Gordon Murray was bringing to the United States, Commander USA was showing it. So that was very very interesting because.
Well, yeah, there was a good thing and a bad thing about that. Like the bad thing was having to sit through the god awful Commander USA sketches, which make
Yes.
Elvira look like Oscar-winning material.
Yes.
But the good thing was that we got to see all the wonderful 80s commercials. It was so great, just so great to see the fashions and the technology and the things that they had, that we had with in the context, and just be like, oh yeah, because so much of what we see now, even if you're watching a movie that takes place in the 80s, it's still kind of the super polished version of the 80s. But this is like real authentic,
the actual 80s, the very
people who are just like making crappy ass commercials about their car dealership or whatever it is. So awesome.
Terrible blouses that everybody was wearing in 1988, the awful checkered shirts and suspenders that young men insisted on wearing, the poorly sculpted mullets and yeah. So that was fun. I mean, and also way too many Clearasil ads. I don't know why so many Clearasil ads.
And OxyClean.
People had that.
Apparently, everybody watching these movies has pimples. Yeah.
I think they decided to stereotype. I think that it's pretty obvious.
So,
hey, basement dwelling people with bad skin, you're home watching. It's Saturday night. You're home watching horror movies. This is what you need.
I didn't even think of it that way. I just thought it was like aimed at teens, but no, it's aimed at teens who have such bad skin that they're stuck home on a Saturday night watching.
It's aimed at teens and people who are older than teens who are still home watching horror movies. Luckily,
that is funny.
It was
skincare.
It was teenage skincare ads and stuff about washing machines. Those two things was
the
what
washing machine was weird. I guess. Hey, well, you know, maybe if you wash your crap, you can go out.
At-home moms gotta watch something. So anyway,
yeah, it's like, listen, obviously you're home on a Saturday night because you have terrible skin and your clothes stink. So wash your damn clothes and wash your damn face, and then maybe you can go out.
Listen,
or maybe it's oh no, I guess that the excuse would be washing your hair. Why you're not going out with one of these people that they decided to stereotype.
I'm just saying that Commander USA was a very interesting phenomenon. This was a weird time for TV hosts because you had Commander USA and you had Cecil Creep on the national network doing the Phantom of the Opry, and this was and also Elvira was still around. So the early '80s. This was taped in '88, but the show Commander USA show was in the early to mid '80s. Oh no, I'm sorry, '85 to '89. So it was in the second half of the '80s. Anyway, you had this period where there were a number of horror hosts around. So that was going on. Anyway, but I also wanted to say I thought this was a fantastic movie. I think it has a lot of interesting themes going on, and there's a lot of really interesting editing tricks that happen, and I wish more people knew this movie. And so that was my main takeaway from it. Anyway, and so it's a cool opportunity to talk about it. So my first thing that I would ask that we talk about is it best to take this movie as a metaphor for the kind of, even though it has a happy ending, when I watch it, the thing that resonates with me the most is the fear that this woman has for her husband, because it's all about how she gets married and immediately after they come home, and really right away, I mean, even like when they're at dinner on their wedding night, she says, the way she explains it later, she goes, "This is not you. It's like you are my husband's twin brother who I've never met before." But she doesn't have anywhere to turn. So what do you think about this movie as basically, forget the aliens, it's a metaphor for marriage and for the doom of marriage?
Not just marriage, but being like a battered woman or an abused woman, because the fact is, yeah, I mean, you don't know, all the men are going to stick together, not necessarily, but that's how you feel maybe, that if you tell anybody else, then they're not going to help you because they're just going to take his side. Or being with like a narcissistic person who just other people just can't see what they're really like. Yeah, it's definitely a metaphor, not just, like I say, not just for marriage, but for being trapped in any kind of abusive relationship.
Well, I also think there's stuff going on here that actually straddle. I'm sure they weren't thinking about it at the time that this movie was made, but straddles across gender lines a little bit, because there's always that fear that you're going to fall in love with somebody and then they're going to change into somebody that's unlovable. And I think that's something almost everybody that's been in a relationship can relate to. And honestly, I think anybody that's in a marriage for a while, that's something that at one point you face, is that you go through a period where you are annoyed with your spouse, or they do seem weird and distant and not like the person you married. And I think that's a very real fear that they've given a sci-fi coat of paint in this.
It's amazing because she's so afraid of him. She just wants, and not like afraid necessarily that he's going to physically hurt her, although that's possible, but she's really afraid that she's not going to be able to please him. And you can see that great desire on her part to make him happy. So she, like she brings home a dog, and the dog senses that he's not human, but she's so unhappy that she can't figure out a way for him. It's so miserable. And watching her scrounge for affection from this person who can't give affection. It's remarkable. You can't watch it and not think of those things. Go ahead, Tony.
I mean, it starts out though with the huge, like, everybody at the beginning is either unhappy with their marriage and telling the guy.
Yeah, tell us about the bar these guys hang out in.
So they hang out in this bar, and basically it's full of loose women.
Yes.
No single guy is going, I'm sorry. People making out in the parking lot and can't even be bothered to not stop making out in the parking lot.
Yes.
Which is definitely the metaphor of the time. Look, here's what those kids are doing. Look, they're even making out right in the front.
The long-running gag. You see that gag in a lot of movies, actually.
They go into the bar, and it's just everybody there is, I can't believe you're getting tied down. Don't be like me. Ugh, this is the
Save
worst.
yourself.
Yeah. So when this happens, so that's pretty cynical and kind of crappy. Also, especially weird when you're watching it with your spouse. I don't know if you guys thought so, right? It's like, what's with these guys? I'm like, oh yeah, they're definitely jerks. I would not want to hang out with them. Because most of the female patrons are of all manner of. There's one woman especially, may or may not be a prostitute, may just like having a good time.
Yeah,
either way.
She's definitely not a prostitute because she doesn't want to give the guy the wrong idea.
Oh yeah, well, I guess she just likes to have a good time.
I'm not giving you the wrong idea, right?
And I don't know. Anyway, but before he has his accident, hits the alien who's basically it's a ruse.
Yes.
But it's really struck me as well. It can also be that change. It can stand for depression, which takes a lot of people, if you have a lot of financial problems or you have problems, but then you feel like you can't really talk to your spouse about them, all that stuff that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, can cause you to be distant. And she's just really trying. And again, that's why I say it's such a weird, it brings up a lot of things, but it's a lot of it's just so cynical. Just how he can't relate and how she's trying to relate. And it's stuck in this very, 50s where it is really, really important for her to it's up to her to make the marriage work, right?
Yeah.
To the point where she writes down all this stuff to her mom and then can't even send it because she's so upset and she just thinks her mom will think that, oh, look what'll happen when her daughter's marriage is a failure and stuff like that. That's pretty rough. It's not what I expected for I married a monster kind of, I married a creature.
I have to say, I did not think of it as cynical or per se or even exploitative. And I said last week that I like things that exploit those fears or feelings that we have. I think that's good shorthand. But I thought this was I thought it was so sad that it was beyond cynicism. You can never really tell. But Tom Tryon, I'm sorry, it was hard. I keep thinking there was 2 R's in there. Tom Tryon, who plays the husband, is a remarkable actor. Because this is a gay actor, all right. He was married at one point in I guess the 50s, and then he got divorced, and then he lived as a gay man and a gay writer from then on. And he projects himself very interestingly. You have to. I keep thinking about this. Oh, and also he was a combat veteran of World War II, and I keep thinking about this man who is living a secret life, playing a character who is also living a secret life, who has a woman who desperately wants his affection and who he finds himself loath to give it to her, not because he wishes her any particular harm, but because it's just not interesting to him. You have these aliens get together, and they bitch about having to deal with what society, in a sense, what society expects of them. That they're supposed to be paying attention to their wives when they'd rather not. And it's so interesting how there's a gay subtext in this film that I don't know if it was intended.
You really have to hand it to the creators of this film that the 4 of us all got a different metaphor, but they're all related.
Yeah,
so we all got a different metaphor. Yours is based on the fact that you knew this thing. So you're like, well, it's a metaphor for being closeted gay man in a marriage. I was watching it as a woman going, what the women I have known of who have suffered in marriage, have been with narcissists, been with abusers, been with drug addicts, whatever. And then I'm hearing Drew and Tony got other things too out of what the kinds of things that you would see of marriage being difficult or being married to somebody that you thought you knew, but they're different than what you thought. And that's really great that they were able to create something that made us all kind of go, wow, this is a really good, metaphor for X, and it's a different thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I had no idea that this actor was gay, or I didn't know anything about him. My read of this wasn't that he didn't have affection for her or whatever, because it seems like the longer this alien is forced to be human, the more human he becomes. But of course, I'm not saying your read of it is wrong, but there is this kind of sadness to the main alien that he's forced to be this thing that he's not. which of course absolutely does work as now that you're saying it does work as a metaphor for being a closeted gay man.
Well, even the idea that you would eventually maybe grow to love the person in some way that you could kind of put up with, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, well, yeah, I'm kind of understanding how to be affectionate toward you. There's a lot of people who get married, or like arranged marriages is another one, where people go, well, we'll grow to love each other. That'll come later, or we'll figure it out.
Well, there's like the point in the movie, and admittedly jumping ahead here, but where he says like, well, you are beautiful, aren't you? And it's like he's starting to kind of grasp human standards of beauty, which, because the aliens are these sort of tentacly big, I would presume if they were in color green creatures. Lord knows what their women look like, but it's and again, the one alien that's his buddy that just seems like he's just living it up, having like, oh, humans have such a good time humans know how to have a good time and everything. Like, he seems like he's like the one that's like, I want to get drunk and get laid.
I think he doesn't he say something like when. Well, they can't have kids, but he likes, he likes the fact that he's like trying, or something like that, where it's like, oh man.
Which is so absurd, because these are aliens in fake bodies. By the way, let's talk a little bit about the alien process for a moment. Getting rid of all the metaphor. What's actually going on?
Yeah, well, let me take a stab at it, because, like I said, my thought
lay it on me.
initially was that they had been taken over, because there's this black smoke that will overcome will overcome the men at one at a time, and then they will get kind of dragged off by it. And then they'll come back as basically Stepford husbands, where they have the same memories of these people, but they don't have their personality, and they're just kind of more drab and cynical versions of themselves. I thought they were just the body was being shared, but like there was an alien consciousness that had come into the body, but the person was still there, I don't want to spoil a movie, but a recent movie that has that idea, that there's two consciousnesses in one person. And so I thought that's what it was. And so to me, the idea that, no, this is a clone body, so it really is like the Stepford Wives, where it's like a second person that has been created to look like and sound like the first person and share the memories.
And has all the memories. Has
all the memories. That's just plain old, like, rape now. I mean, because even before it was still rape, but it was at least the person thought that they were. No, this is a different person. And so if this guy's having sex, like these people having sex, it's like a twin coming in and being like pretending to be their twin brother. It's just not at all. I mean, that was just really terrifying. And then, it's just a glamour basically for their weird alien person that's underneath, the actual person is back on the ship being drained of whatever. That's my read of it.
Oh, that's right. They're broadcasting all their thoughts. Was that you were going to say, Tony?
Well, so they can have their memories and everything.
Yeah.
But all that stuff, what they retain is that's one of the things that's just super consistent. Like they remember some things and not others. Mm-hmm. Like it's definitely, whenever the plot device is, I don't remember something.
That's right.
Then they use it. But it doesn't, it's all over the map what they do and don't remember.
That's
it's totally inconsistent.
It doesn't make, what they don't remember doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Unlike Jason,
the technology's not perfect.
Sure.
Unlike Jason, though, like, I am completely unburdened with the idea that this one alien is getting off on being human. Like, I don't, like, I guess it's preposterous, but the whole conceit that aliens have come to Earth to impregnate our women is, like, the plan is preposterous if you're gonna like really look at it. It's insane.
Well, especially considering that's their plan, but they have no real. They're like, yeah, we don't know how we're gonna do this yet. We're just gonna try to take over and see if we can.
Yeah,
we're gonna give it the old college try.
Wouldn't you try and find a species that's more like similar to your own instead of something that's very different? I mean, once you get over that hurdle, like the idea that, okay, these are aliens and they're pretending to be people, like the fact that that is like troubling to you, Jason, I'm like, of all things in this movie, like that to me, like I would watch a whole movie about that guy if it was like written the right way. Because to me, that
Sure.
was like, I was bummed out when he drowned, because I just found that whole storyline to be so weird
Yes.
and oddly fascinating to me.
I have to say I loved, and you know, it's possible that there are far better movies to dig into characters like this with, but I loved like her friend is the blonde girl, and I'm trying to remember the name of the one. Anyway, Marge's close friend who gets married to Bill's friend. She's the one who gives the funny line about how she was studying up on getting a career, but now she's been saved from all that. She's the one with the cynical lines and the snappy patter, and it's a wonderful character. You know, this sort of boozy broad who you know, she's the one who could help you navigate, since she's also a little bit older, or at least plays that way. She could help somebody like Marge navigate this universe where you will always be at a power differential. You'll always be unable to succeed exactly. But she knows, given that this is the world, she knows how to navigate it. And that's even without any monsters from outer space. That's just America. She's, you know, she knows
Well,
how to make it as a wife, basically.
I like the two of them as a couple a lot. Like, you have the one guy who kind of looks like he's trying to be Dean, like a low rent Dean Martin, and
Yeah.
she's kind of got the vibe of like a small town woman that's trying to be Jane Mansfield kind of
Yes.
thing going on. Like, they're a fun couple to me. You know, like I you know, as 1950s characters, I like the two of them together a lot.
Yeah.
You know, they're weird, like, man, anything to not be a spinster.
Yes.
I mean,
sure. Well,
he's not great, but don't you ruin this, my,
right.
not being a spinster. Because not only does she say she uses career woman, but she means people who never married.
Right.
Like, because she says, I was studying Joan of Arc and all the women she listed.
Yeah.
It's not she'd have to get a career. It's she didn't want her career to be spinster.
Yeah, she didn't want to have to spin her.
Yeah, the only
spin
people
her
who
failure.
didn't have who had careers were people who weren't married. I mean, why you at that point, like, you have teachers and secretaries and nurses, and then you have married women. You know, I mean, it was just how it was, mostly. So yeah, I mean, that is how she sees it.
There's a great moment there, actually, where you know, she's getting married, and Marge wants to say, listen, I suspect that the men are being taken over by aliens. But she says, hey, okay, I have something to tell you. And then Bill makes his appearance, and he goes, why don't you tell her later? And here's what's funny is, it happens for a long time in this movie that Marge and Bill sort of dance around one another like you know, a couple of cats, knowing that they are onto one another's secrets, and knowing that the other person knows, and yet not actually addressing it out loud, because to address it out loud would be to kind of bring everything crashing down.
Which, again,
and that's
metaphor for marriage, because that is always the case when anybody has, like Tony was saying, a big thing that they just are bottling up or not wanting to talk about, and you're like, well, if once I say this, everything changes. So I'm just going to pretend for a while like everything's fine. But you know what I was thinking that made me really sad in this film is that every woman that had one of those alien husbands was going through the same thing. Not the part necessarily where she actually saw the proof, because this woman, the main character, actually sees Marge actually sees the aliens. And so she knows for sure. But all of the women have to be seeing their men go through this drastic transformation, and they're all going, you know, what the hell? Like, what happened to the man I fell in love with? Like, she writes in her letter or her journal, whatever it is that she writes and then throws away.
It's a letter,
this is not the same man I fell in love with. And they're all dealing with it, and none of them are talking about it, because it's all this big hush-hush. We're supposed to pretend that our lives are perfect and we're super happy.
But I thought that women had in movies like this, I always imagined that there was this sort of sewing circle idea that women know one another's secrets, and that they're
if it's something like, you know, that you could say like, oh, Bill, blah blah blah, but it's not going to be like I just have this feeling that it's not the same person. That it may happen with some relationships, but I don't get the feeling it happens in the hair salon while they're sitting under those hair dryers. You know, I just don't feel like it's the same person I fell in love with. Yeah, me either. I don't think that. And I don't know because I don't live in this.
I actually just had a real wonderful thought. Can you imagine actually, it would kind of take this movie in a different direction, but can you imagine if, her name is Helen, by the way, if Marge were to get to Helen, you know, after Helen is married and after a while, and they're like, have you noticed that your husband is a little different? And Helen's like, yeah, my husband's being a little different
really
too.
would be the separate wives, though.
Then that really would be the separate wives. You're exactly right. Actually, come to think of it.
The thing that I liked about
and it didn't work because she was just like, shut up, I want to marry this guy. That's the thing. It's like, again, back with the metaphors, you can't tell a person anything about their relationship. They have to figure it out for themselves. So you can see as plain as day, you should not be in this relationship. This guy treats you like garbage, or this woman treats you like shit. But they're not going to see it, or at least not in a way that they're willing to change it until they're ready.
Yeah. Drew, you were
I actually thought that was a bit of trope busting too, because like in a lesser movie, in most movies, frankly, you would have one scene where the character that knows people being taken over by aliens, where the character would break down and have a histrionic fit, where they exclaim, "Alien!" And this woman doesn't really do that until like much later in the movie, because she's actually grappling with the idea that if I say this, people are going to think that I'm insane.
Yeah.
And you know, I thought that was great. Like the only
turn out they do when she does say it.
Yeah. Well, the only real confidant she has is the doctor that she's seeing.
Right. The doctor. There's a moment when she goes
to the cop.
to.
Remember, she goes to the cop, and the cop's like, "Oh yeah, but he turns out to be an alien."
Well,
so then she goes to.
It's worse. He's her godfather, which adds to the paranoia once we realize that he's been taken over as well.
It's not paranoia; they really are out to get you.
He totally gaslights her. Oh no, I'm not saying you're crazy.
No, I know. It's just the saying.
But if you tell people, they might think you're crazy. Not me, because I'm totally not alien. And then there's the guy who's a total weaselly. He's probably a private eye, but he's a total weasel that she meets and hits on her. But then he decides, like, hey, that's weird. Talk about trope busting. The cops come. They can talk, so the aliens can talk telepathically. He summons the cops that are, authority figures.
Yes.
So the cops are totally corrupt in this town now because they're all aliens. They flat out, they're going to take him someplace safe. He resists. They flat out shoot him in the face.
Yes. Absolutely.
When I decided that this was Body Snatchers, I was like, there's no way this ends well. There's no way, because it never occurred to me in a million years that two German shepherds could defeat the whole alien army that was going to take over the earth.
Right.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously very good dogs.
They're good dogs. Yes, they are. I love that strange Weasley character who this private eye. There are lots of wonderful minor characters. So he has decided, and I think I believe him. He goes, that girl was weird that she was a married girl, but she came to the bar where all the possibly prostitutes hang out, and and I thought maybe she would go out again, so I figured out where she lived, and I'm just hanging out outside her house. Isn't that? I mean, here's the thing. That's a crazy thing for him to do, but I also completely believe it. That is that he's just I'm gonna hang out outside that woman's house until she wanders out. She's trying to save the Earth. He is really hoping that she's going to go out again so that he can hit on her at the bar. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, it's interesting because you really get the impression he's seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So the fact that piqued his interest was where it's like, man, something like this just doesn't add up. Like,
yes.
It starts with him going, well, I laid on the charm and she wasn't having any of that. Why was she even in this bar? And then turns into, well, that was really weird. Now that I'm a little bit sober.
Yes.
Maybe I should go check this out. I haven't, I don't really think they mention if he is actually a private eye, but he just gives off that kind of vibe.
I'm pretty sure he's a
private
eye.
You call him a private eye. I think he's supposed to be a criminal. Like they dressed him up almost like a gangster.
That's true.
That could be
true. He is dressed like it. Well, there okay, there are a number like just like the girl, the couple girls drinking their sodas at the bar or whatever, and they're like, "How come those guys over there aren't even looking at us?" And then the other girl who ends up hitting on an alien and he kills her. I think the movie's playing sort of two ways. You could read those women as just the kind of loose women that you, the audience, should understand are hanging out in bars at night, or maybe they're all prostitutes. It's unclear. It is never, unless I missed some dialogue, it is never
No.
made clear that these are prostitutes.
I think you're right. Like, well, they never really come out. Like, that's the thing is there's a lot of stuff to allude to.
Yeah.
But
I did think, by the way, that guy was a private detective. I put myself on mute. I didn't realize I had done that. I did think he was a private detective. I think he's the Dick Tracy style.
he says, he says something to the cops that led me to believe that. Now I can't remember what it was.
There's a wonderful Western Union moment where, and yet again, they hit this same note that Marge hit with Bill. Marge goes to the Western Union. After nobody's listening to her, she's going to send a telegram to the FBI. So she goes to Western Union. She gives the guy the telegram. She pays for it. She walks out. She looks through the window. He's already been compromised by the alien, so he tears it up and he throws it away. Think of this. Here's the interesting thing. If he had done it in her presence or known that she was watching, then they would, then he would be making her aware that he knew that he was an alien and she was up on them. But by her spying through the window, although all it requires is for her to turn around, you can continue the just paranoia of everybody around me is doing bad things, and I can't tell anyone because everyone knows. It's an extraordinarily lonely feeling, for her.
It's made even worse by the fact her next thing is she sees him tear it up.
Yeah.
He telepathically tells the cops to be there because she might be a flight risk.
Yes.
And they already are out there ready to intercept her, telling her that the road out of town is washed out.
It is very much.
That's, I mean, the paranoia level that they raise.
Yeah.
Is pretty good, man, for what this movie is. It could be, it's not the best, but she can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
It's horrifying.
And even the fact is, even the guys that, because when she eventually goes to the doctor and he's like, how do you know you trust me? She's like, I don't. He says, I know how we can find human men that can help us. It's all the men who have had babies, because we know these people can't have babies. But the fact is, they could have been conceived before they got taken over. The babies. So I mean, they could have conceived a baby and then the alien.
Yeah, that might not have worked. I mean,
I don't know, but anyway, so that was lucky that she is able to trust him, and especially lucky again that they have these magical German shepherds that can.
The clockwork of the script determines that they must come up with a plan that's going to work this time, because the movie clicks along at a pretty quick rate. The cool thing, Tony, about the paranoia. Turns out paranoia is not that expensive to make a movie about. That's the awesome thing, is you can build up so much of the audience just leaning forward to watch to see what'll happen just by having a bunch of characters that don't trust one another. It's really inspiring to me, to watch.
And again, that's another one of the places where I was saying, look how far we have not come, because honestly, that's how we are now. It's like everybody's like, well, are you, I mean, not even if you look alike, you still might be like, are you one of that side or are you on my side? And certainly if you look different, then they're like, that guy's brown, so maybe he's this, or that person's white, maybe they're going to shoot me. I mean, it's not, it's constant now. So I actually felt that a little bit in this film as well. It's just like, wow, just the fact that she's driving and the cops shows up and it's like, hey, what do you want? What are you doing? I just had a guy tell me the other day that he got pulled over for driving while brown, and it's that idea of like, crap, I've been cornered. Something bad is about to happen to me. So she's just like, oh, I just want to go over. Oh, no, road's washed out, can't go there. And she's like, okay. So she just goes back home. She doesn't know what else to do.
So much of it depends on I mean, nothing's going to go well for her even if she started screaming and fighting, right? But so much of what happens to her depends on her politeness, and the fact that
And her
she's not going to
willingness to pretend everything is fine.
she won't just drive past the cop. I'm not
Well,
saying
I mean,
that
that's really dangerous. If you those guys, they're not even regular cops. They have those. I mean, even a regular cop, you're not going to just plow through the roadblock because they might shoot you. But these guys, they shoot you, you vaporize. I mean, she
yes.
didn't necessarily know that, but
Yeah. By the way, I like her haircut. Just so I know that Rain was not happy with it. I thought it was a totally cute haircut. But there you go. What do I know?
I didn't notice it one way or the other. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the German Shepherds. Can we get there?
Yes,
or
and we should, and then we should get to the end. So, and in fact,
Well,
this is where
I have a question now.
Yeah.
Before we get to the ending, why do you think that they introduced the idea that the aliens cannot drink alcohol, but they never really do anything with it?
I really have
it's
no
just
idea.
Part of the reasons why you know that they're different, that there's something wrong, because it's like you're always like, okay, there's something I can't put my finger on about how the person's behaving, but for sure I can put my finger on the fact that they used to drink and now they don't. So it's like the foreign. Something different has happened here, I think.
Yeah, I believe that. I can't think of any other reason. The whole they don't breathe air. That makes sense because they're playing up the fact that these guys.
Yeah. I do think it's part of the red-blooded Americans drink alcohol. Although they do have the bartender guy who's a souse as well.
Yes.
Be totally incompetent and terrible. That's again why I go with the cynicism angle. Like,
yeah.
Most people in this movie are kind of terrible and in the outset, and it's just they keep bringing up this like, well, don't be like this, or those people. There's a lot of those people in this movie, of all walks of life, and I find that kind of fascinating. It's a weird, twisty morality tale in a lot of ways. It's very odd, but I think it's part of that. But it's also because they're otherworldly as well. I go with my theory is a little bit of column A and column B.
Yeah. I actually I do think I think ultimately it's more symbolic. It's just that there's ways that red-blooded Americans are supposed to act. And
evidently you're supposed to go to a bar and grouse about marriage.
Jesus, and what a boring bar. Can I just mention, by the way, that if you're looking at this movie has so many wonderful stylistic elements that the wedding night is beautifully filmed. There's this trick cut where you follow them like down a path and then suddenly they walk. You think you're going into one scene and then suddenly they walk out onto the balcony and you've like moved forward several hours and it's just beautiful. So there's like beautiful artistic stuff here. And so it's got to be deliberate that the bar they gather in to grouse every night and whine about their wives who want them to be around is like the least fun bar that 1958 possibly. It looks
diner.
like it's like Mel's Diner. It'd be like it's like they're getting together in a greasy spoon and sitting at some checkered table in a brightly lit restaurant and drinking their drinks. It's so crazy.
What's funny though, not funny haha, but just so bizarre is to keep up appearances, they get together, buy one drink a piece and just kind of stare at it. It's not like they came together to have like, oh, we're gonna act human and have witty banter and complain about our wives and stuff. They just all kind of come together and mope.
Yes.
The pains of being an alien. I can't even drink this.
And they just stare at them.
Everybody's like looking at them like, why do they even come here anymore?
Well, and the bartender finally calls them out on it and is like, look, you guys used to spend all this money here and now you just sit there and look at this one drink. Get out of here.
Yeah.
But it's like they've decided, like, you're not doing a very good job.
I
get that you can't drink it, but you could at least, I don't know, throw it over your shoulder, give it to women. You know, act like all of you collectively had your favorite things die or get taken from you. They just are all such sad sacks.
It is a very interesting movie, just that suggests that marriage as a union, as an institution, is deeply damaged in the United States. I think that. And then at the end, we get a happy ending because the red-blooded men who are able to create children gather together to go find the hideout of all of these hinky men who want to hang out with one another and not make children, and they find them and kill them. That is a deeply disturbing lesson from a movie that I think has an extremely gay subtext. That's really scary. But that's what happens, and some dogs get
Well, and
involved.
then now we're talking though about well, let me think. Okay, so what's going on politically in this time as far as foreign affairs? Who are we
1958?
dealing with? Are we already in the Red Scare? Like, are we already in?
Yeah. When does
Well, they're
that
talking
could be
about
some
Korea at one point too.
Right, that could be some of that too. Of like, oh, they're trying to infiltrate our country, and we've got to fight back or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is literally alien. Like they're coming into our country and taking our women, and they want to make their half-breed babies.
Any number of things we can pull out of all of these concepts, and so that makes it a good film. Like I said, I do want to just go back a little bit and revisit the fact that the women are completely useless in this film. Like, except for this one woman who, really, she's not that useful herself, Marge, but she at least is willing to try.
She does uncover the plot.
Yeah,
she's willing to try to do something. Yes, but she is, she's not the damsel in distress that we have, like in the oh my gosh, why am I not able to think of it? The zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead. She's not the Night of the Living Dead useless, but she's, not able to accomplish very much on her own, except for finally when she's able to get a man to help her in the form of the doctor. But the other women are not around, and when they're around, they're just kind of trying to pick up men. They're certainly not helping to find the aliens or to do anything toward. They don't have any good ideas. They don't even talk about their own experience with their own alien men. Like, we don't even have that scene. So that part, I did want to just stress that I think that as much as there are some great things about this film, that part is missing.
The generals are completely antiquated. Like it's and like the way it looks, like the way it looks at everything. Like, either you're married and you're complacent or confused, or you're single and you're very, very horny and aggressive, and therefore you should be killed.
If you're a woman, you're useless. If you're single.
And if you're, these alien, with the aliens, you have, the ones that they're disgusted by the fact that they have to be human, or there's, the one that's gone native and, is
native.
Well, that's basically that's happened, and like that's the best possible thing you could be, is a loudish American, horn dog who hangs out at bars, and that's all the gender roles in this are very, very, very old fashioned.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
I think that's helping us like a spy,
You're not completely useless
as
a woman. I mean, you could have kids.
Yeah, that's true.
That's literally the roles the aliens want to put them in. They want to make women into breeding factories.
Yeah.
But I was trying to bring it back to the idea of the Red Scare, and I think it's spies is really what they're dealing with, because they're dealing with people who are foreign and trying to take over our country, but they're pretending to be like us, and they're acting like we are. That's a spy for you.
Sure, but you're useful to even to aliens. You're useful if you can have children.
Yeah.
So Happy Mother's Day. You've got that going for you, according to this movie. Oh man, at least I want to say, at least in light of a lot of political things that we may have not gotten right since this era, I think at least we're not here any longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm as a guy, I'm going to say that. Julie, it's up to you to tell me.
That's how I started off, is saying we have made a lot of progress, even though we've taken a few steps backward lately. But yes, I mean, we're not at this point, of course.
Yeah. So, yay. Yay.
Yay, progress.
Well, Trump, for one, would welcome our alien overlords.
So the dogs, basically, when they do find the one ship, the dogs attack the aliens and are able to pull away the glamour by ripping off the breathing apparatuses that the aliens have, causing them to die in the Earth atmosphere. And when they do, they're able to free the captured men who return, and it's as simple as that.
There seem to be hundreds of ships, it seemed like to me at the end. But the two dogs, literally there are two dogs that we see. Maybe there may be more dogs, but there are not billions of dogs. There are two German Shepherds, and by the way, I grew up with German Shepherds, so I have a special fondness for them. They're beautiful and wonderful dogs. And so there's two German Shepherds that we see, and one of them gets vaporized after he kills one of the aliens. That's it. Like the whole legion of ships has decided, oh, well, we've been bested. We need to go now because the German Shepherds figured out how to. Because these guys didn't. The humans don't even do it. It's not like the humans see the German Shepherd pull the tube and go, oh, now we know how to defeat them, and then they all go up and start pulling tubes. They literally just go, okay, let's go into this ship and free the humans that are there, and that turns out to kill these aliens. But you still need the German Shepherds to
Yes.
kill them.
Well, bullets will not kill these aliens, but dogs will.
To your point, that is the aliens that are like, so we're telling you now we've been discovered. The humans have found us. This isn't the planet. It's also, oh damn, they have dogs. We did not count on this.
What did you call it, Jason? That they can't outsmart our canine.
Yeah, I know. I can't.
Canine alien defense technology.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
We knew that we could probably take over humans. It was a pretty good chance we could take over most of the planet. We have hundreds of ships. Who would have thought they had German Shepherds? This is awful.
Yeah.
I mean, despite the fact it's a planet they can't breathe on, and so they have to have a one-to-one symbiotic, it doesn't seem like a good long-term plan because you've got to clutter up the world with extra, you've got to double everybody. I guess that you don't kill outright.
Right.
But that means the whole planet, if they didn't kill anybody, you would have twice as many people on the Earth.
Well,
you'd have saucers full of people, and all of those people would have a double. This weird double.
Well, also, I think you can presume that this is a pilot program, right? So that one ship has come down to this little American town, and all the rest have just been in orbit for like a year and a half. Waiting to see how this pilot program works out. And then they get a report that goes, no, didn't work. And so off they go.
And they're all men, too. So, they're just, man, I guess we'll just do alien dude things up here.
Why would you not try this plan out? Wouldn't you try to find a species that was more compatible
It may be the only
with your own?
Well, it may be the closest that they've been able to find, and they're just trying it out. But I want to know how it is that the cop alien, communicates through his little communicator thing in English, and they still all understand it. Do they have a universal translator? Because he's like, our mission has failed, everyone died, and then he dies.
Yes.
All aliens speak English. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a TV trope. All aliens speak English in the 80s, and it's
right.
Do you think they got halfway out of our galaxy, once they've been defeated, and then somebody goes, "Oh, guys, what if we had just taken over the dogs?"
Yeah.
It makes about as much sense.
And they're like, "Oh, they would have never known." Damn it. Oh, well, the pilot program's dead. Just shut up, Jim.
Yes.
That would have been great. Thanks for telling us now that we've almost left the galaxy after we've been defeated. They'll be on to us now. You could have told us 2 years ago.
Yes. Next galaxy.
Stupid.
It is remarkable. So, all right, let's get our final thoughts on this amazing movie. I mean, this was a lot of fun. Let's see. It was Joya, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. So, Joya, I married a monster from outer space. I mean, should people run out and watch this?
He keeps saying that, and I keep telling him, I am not a monster from outer space. Stop saying that.
That's so mean.
No,
Jason,
that we know of.
You would say that on Mother's Day?
Question mark? Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Actually, I've been telling my kids ever since they were little that I'm an alien from outer space, and so it actually is a little bit true. Because I'm always like, you're half alien, because I'm an alien from outer space. And they don't find it humorous for some reason. But anyway, I think this film, the more we've talked about it, the more I like it, because I've realized just how many layers it has. Good Lord. But I I was definitely caught up a lot in how useless the females were. But other than that, I think it was really interesting. Very interesting concepts. I did feel like some of the things we talked about of what could have happened or how it could have gone would have made it a better film. I actually think, I hate to say this because I hate endings that are not happy endings. I think it would have been better with the Body Snatchers ending. I really think that they should have just taken over the earth, because it does, or at least if they're going to get defeated, it should have been more satisfactory than just the German Shepherds rock and they're going to leave. But other than the end, though, I think it's well done. There's a lot of interesting parts to it, and again, it gave us some really interesting context to kind of what at least the people who made this film were thinking in 1958. So, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to see it, and I look forward to the next one.
Wonderful. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Julia that I like it a bit more after having discussed it with everybody. I think it has a lot more layers than I had thought of. I still find it at its heart kind of darker than I imagined it to be. Also, I still think the animal deaths that are in there. I mean, the main alien just kills a cat just because he's storming off, and all of that just disturbed me. Forget they're taking over humans, and that's bad and everything. But the pet related deaths were just, I don't dig on that. But I like it. I don't think this is a movie I would watch, a ton of times. But talking it through, I think it's really interesting. The fact that the lead was a gay man in this era of Hollywood as well does add a lot more context, and it can have been easy. I think it's interesting that he picked up this part. There's always a chance too that it's strange when we spend hour and a half analyzing a movie. I think a lot of these movies kind of made on the cheap, even if there's some substance behind them. I doubt that a lot of the people making a lot of these films, I think they'd be kind of baffled that we people dissecting them so much. But I think that's what makes it kind of cool. We can look back on this and really kind of dig into it more than, hey, I went and saw this at a drive-in when it was out, and it would have not as much consequence, Yeah,
that's an excellent point. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, I think it's got a lot going for it. I think it's an interesting sci-fi monster movie of this time period. I like that it's kind of a prototype for Stepford Wives and Rosemary's Baby and all these paranoid sci-fi horror films that would come after it. And yet it's this very close relative of invasion of the Body Snatchers. So I think it's a good movie to watch if you are already sort of familiar with the tropes of these kinds of movies, but also the fact that it sort of turns some of them on its head. Mm-hmm. It's way better than it needed to be.
That's for sure.
You could a lot of times people will watch a movie from this time period and they're just sort of looking for cheap thrills. This movie actually gives you some stuff to think about, which is what good sci-fi is supposed to do. So I really recommend this movie. You can rent it on Prime if you've never seen it, by the way.
That's what I did.
So for people who listen to this podcast, and you don't want to pay for a DVD or whatever, it is on Prime. I think it's well worth watching.
Yeah, very good. I'll just agree with all of that. I've really enjoyed this discussion. I think this movie, it has a lot to say. I think it's some beautiful black and white, and the moments, especially on the wedding night, at the hotel looking out on the water. It reminded me of Jacques Tourneur. It's good looking stuff. This is a neat film. I've heard about it for years and years and years, and I'm pretty certain that I'd never actually seen it until this weekend. So very excited. Let's do endorsements. Those things that you've been watching or reading or listening to that you think we ought to check out. So coming around again, Julia, what do you have to recommend?
I don't have any thing to recommend in terms of media because I've been super busy and I can't really think of anything that I've consumed recently. So I am just going to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the women out there who are moms or who serve some kind of motherly role toward somebody or something, even if it is cats or but dogs. And just, say on behalf of mothers, we appreciate all the pampering and all the wonderful things that our kids and our hubbies and our families and our friends have done for us to make us feel special.
Oh, that's very kind. Awesome. Tony, what about you?
A couple things. One, along with Julia, much appreciation not only to moms but people who maybe haven't had the best time of things. And sometimes Mother's Day can be really hard, but luckily I have a bunch of friends that I think hopefully you have those people in your life that you can confide in and talk to and hang out with when it seems like, oh man, I don't want to post, this Happy Mother's Day thing doesn't really resonate with me. And so, hopefully both sides of the coin, like grab a friend. Also, in that same vein, I've seen a lot of weird stuff this week. So I'm advocating just be cool. Don't be a jerk. Let's in your daily life when you not to get too preachy, but I see so many times like think before you post a thing. Like, we can be cooler than this. We don't have to be like the aliens. We can be, because even they're trying to learn, but they're not successful at it. Like, be the learning part and be the not jerk part. And on a side note, on media note, that's my like, hey, can't we just be cool with each other? On the media side, Rain and I just watched Mary and the Witch's Flower, and it is excellent. And I'd seen it at Fantastic Fest, but it was great rewatching it, and some fantastic animation, really, really cool, fun stuff. They nailed, there's this cat that has all these expressions, and at any given time, you know exactly what's on the cat mind, the way that they do all of its expressions, even more so than some of the more human characters in the movie. But yeah, I highly recommend Mary and the Witch's Castle. It's really great.
Interesting.
And it's cool. PG, great family stuff too.
Awesome. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have had for reasons I will not be going into on this podcast, by the way, I've had a very stressful week, and I've been committing a lot of acts of retail therapy via Amazon Prime, particularly because we have been doing this retrospective of 50s horror and sci-fi films. There is a service on Amazon Prime called Universal Vault, which is print-on-demand DVDs of movies that may have an audience, but they're not necessarily something that's going to warrant a wide-release DVD. And, man, it is a treasure trove of 50s sci-fi and horror. I got, over the last week, I've got Dr. Cyclops, The Land Unknown, Tarantula, The Mole People, Monster on the Campus, just a lot of great stuff, and you can get them dirt cheap, and you can have them usually within a day, and you can be watching all this awesome vintage monster movie goodness, and it has just been the soothing balm of my soul over the last week. I anytime I get a new one of these DVDs, I pop it in, and it relaxes me. And some of the movies that I've bought, I know we're going to discuss, and some of them we may never get to. But like a couple of nights ago, I watched the Mole People again for the first time in a long time, and man, what a wonderfully weird movie that is. Also kudos to the Land Unknown, which is a 1950s dinosaur movie that is also way better than it needs to be. And hopefully if we ever do a dinosaur movie retrospective, we can get to that. But great service, Universal Vault on Amazon Prime, print on demand DVDs. You should if you're trying to bulk up your horror and sci-fi collection, great way to get some little deserving, but maybe movies that don't get as much love as others into your collection.
It's wonderful advice. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, the Warner Archive and a couple other groups like that doing these print on demand stuff where they have the rights, and so yeah, you can order one. Likewise, a lot of that stuff is getting added to Prime now. The reason why I love these sort of sometimes forgotten films, I Married a Monster from Outer Space is a major film, but the reason why I love some of these minor films that are forgotten is sometimes you catch a vestigial idea that might have caught on in Hollywood and didn't happen. So you kind of catch like some fresh ideas that sort of never made it into the mainstream. Sometimes you catch like ideas of the director that just sort of slipped through because the movie was being made really fast and nobody had time for it. And I find that we as a group, when we talk about a movie like I know you're sick of me talking about it, but Zombies of Moratau, there's so much more to talk about than with a lot of these films that are really really major, and we know exactly what we think, and it's a part of a you know of an ongoing conversation that movies have been in for the past 30 years, where everybody knows what the conversation is going to be about. I love the things that these lesser known pieces of art lead you to. It just makes me happy. Okay, my recommendation of the week, actually two. First, Cult Horror Movies by Danny Peary. So this is the Kindle version, or the ebook version of Danny Peary's cult movies. He's just taken the reviews that are about horror movies, including sci-fi horror, such as I Married a Monster from Outer Space, and he's gathered them all together into an ebook called Cult Horror Movies. And I can't remember what it's priced. It's cheaper than your typical ebook, and it's just all of Danny Peary's amazing reviews, and they're all right there. So I really recommend that you pick that up, because I've read very few better essayists about film than Danny Peary, who made those wonderful books called Cult Movies, and for the longest time they were not available. And second, John Mulaney has a new comedy special that is on Netflix. And if you've never seen John Mulaney in stand up, he is extraordinarily funny. He has a new one called Kid Gorgeous at Radio City. And so those are my recommendations: Danny Peary's Cult Horror Movies, the ebook, and John Mulaney's new Netflix comedy special. So that is the end of our show on I Married a Monster from Outer Space. We'll be back, I believe, next week with yet more Atom Age horror. This is a really, really fun retrospective that's going to let us kind of go far and wide. We're going to be hitting some neat stuff. Right now I don't even remember what's next, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be good. So if you are listening for the first time, or if you've been around for a long time, come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Get into arguments. We will totally engage with you. Let your friends know about the show. Leave reviews on iTunes so that other people can find out about it. We are deeply, deeply thankful. Everybody, have a wonderful week. It's really great talking to you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.